3 minutes. This is it. The beginning.
One of my favorite things to look for in movies is how filmmakers start their stories. Exposition is tricky. You need to give the audience enough information to follow along, but you shouldn't overwhelm them. And David Fincher is a true master of this. His opening sequences flow so seamlessly and hook the audience so effortlessly that we barely notice how or when we receive all the key details that shape our understanding of the world and characters. In the age of visual hooks, ads and TV commercials that fight for our attention, it's easy to overlook just how ahead of his time Fincher has always been. In the cinema where people have already paid for their tickets and are committed to a 2-hour film, making the first few minutes exciting might seem unnecessary. But not for Fincher.
A lot of people who were just like, what the fuck? Who is this twerp?
To him, the first 15 minutes are just as important as the entire film, if not more. He doesn't just want you to sit through it, he wants you to absorb it. Every moment is designed to blend ideas, setting up lines of dialogue, shots, or details that will click into place later. And there's no better example of this than the prologue and first 30 minutes of Fight Club, an exposition so perfectly executed that it sets up the entire film and pulls you into its world of chaos.
Gentlemen, welcome to Fight Club.
Fight Club is one of my favorite book adaptations, because it not only improves on several aspects of Chuck Palahniuk's novel, but also perfectly captures its humor and stream of consciousness style. From the very first moment, the film places us inside the narrator's mind, deep in his amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for fear, before zooming out to reveal the gun in his mouth held by Tyler. We are inside his head not just visually, but sonically.
With a gun barrel between your teeth, you speak only in vowels.
Hearing and experiencing his thoughts as much as we see them. The scene immediately plants the most important questions in our minds. Why is the narrator in this situation?
3 minutes. This is it.
What's going to happen in 3 minutes?
People are always asking me if I know Tyler Durden.
Who is Tyler Durden? And right away it offers some answers.
The demolitions committee of Project Mayhem wrapped the foundation columns of a dozen buildings with blasting gelatin.
Before introducing a third key character,
The girl named Marla Singer.
and transitioning seamlessly into the past. This flashback structure frames the narrative, showing us the moment of highest tension, which ultimately bookends the story. But this prologue isn't separate from the rest of the exposition. The quick pace of the montage and the narrator's chaotic thinking pull us into his mind, carrying us through the setup. The film's space-time is unplaceable. It takes place in a city that feels like nowhere and everywhere.
No, wait, back up. Let me start earlier.
Over the next 25 minutes, we see flashbacks within flashbacks, introducing Bob, the narrator's insomnia, his consumer-driven lifestyle, his morally questionable addiction to support groups, his narcolepsy, the cave, Marla Singer, and finally,
Tyler Durden.
all of these elements are packed into a single serving portion of exposition without ever feeling like a forced information dump. Despite the rapid pacing, Fincher ensures that the audience follows along effortlessly. What's amazing here is how we move through a sequence of montages with moments from the narrator's life, transitioning one after the other. The editing and narration makes this both unique and easy to digest.
You know, the entirety of Act 1 of this film really is like a long montage that explains Jack and his world.
The inciting incident, which marks the end of the first act and the exposition, comes at the 28-minute mark when the narrator's apartment is destroyed, wiping away his old life. This moment pushes him to reach out to Tyler Durden, setting everything in motion. To better explain why this 30-minute sequence is perfect and how Fincher achieved it, let's take a look at how a screenplay typically looks like. This is Sitfield's paradigm, which organizes stories into structured timelines. It's a simple formula we've seen countless times in movies, but the key elements to highlight are the inciting incident and plot points, both crucial in driving the screenplay forward. They are often confused, but the main difference lies in timing and the protagonist's role. The inciting incident disrupts the protagonist's normal world, something that happens to him, making his role passive. Plot points, on the other hand, are events and decisions that redefine the story's direction. Here the protagonist takes action, actively shifting the narrative into the next act. In Fight Club, the inciting incident is the destruction of the narrator's apartment, forcing him to start over and seek shelter. This leads him to Tyler Durden, and his decision to live with him ultimately results in the creation of Fight Club.
So really that's the moment of the beginning of true psychosis there.
Plot point number 1. Now the first act is over and the real story begins.
Tyler?
Later on in the film, Tyler disappears and he looks for him around the country only to realize that he remembers these places.
Do you know me?
Are you sure this isn't a test?
Plot point number 2. This starts the third act and will lead us back to the place of the first scene. These 2 plot points anchor the story. The first one is the start of it all, the loss of control for the character, which leads to the inception of Fight Club, and the second is where he wants to take back control and end Project Mayhem, which has taken on a life of its own. But we are talking about Fincher. It's not that simple with him. You see, Fight Club is a peculiar case, because as we later learn, the narrator blew up his own apartment. So was he active or passive? From his perspective and ours, following his unreliable narration, it seems like an external event. But by the end, we realize he was never truly passive. This perfectly aligns with the film's themes of self-destruction, identity crisis, and repressed desires, making it a story that resists a standard structure. Part of the praise has to go to the original author of the book, Chuck Palahniuk, and screenwriter Jim Uhls, who worked together with Fincher to present and get studio execs to make Fight Club.
I said, here's the 2 ways you can go. You can do the $3 million version of this movie and make it on videotape, or it may go straight to DVD. Or the Real Actors edition here is the $50 million version. We went off when we came back, we had a schedule, we had a budget, we had a cast, we had storyboards, and we had a script. We put this giant thing on the table and we said, here it is. It's Brad Pitt, it's Edward Norton. You have 3 days, let us know.
He had everything figured out, securing Brad Pitt and Edward Norton early on, and later casting Helena Bonham Carter, who had mostly played very different roles but became just as essential to the film as her co-stars.
Look, I want to take the book, make it into a movie. I don't want to change it that much. I want to try to maintain as much of this voice. The strongest thing the film has going for it is Chuck's voice.
But for an author as detail-oriented and hands-on as Fincher, the screenplay is just a guideline. A film like this evolves through continuous adjustments with key decisions made throughout production. While text has many tools to explain and describe, in film, visual cues shape the logic, making the director's role crucial. So how does he build these perfect stories? Let's go back to the first scene.
Deja vu. All over again.
The technique of a deadline is one of the most common tools to create tension in a film.
You got about 30 seconds.
By establishing that in 3 minutes everything ends, the filmmakers create a world which hinges on whether there will be resolution in this time frame. Think of your favorite films, and I'm sure you will find that certain scenes or even the whole film is built around the critical deadline.
Find the president, bring him out in 24 hours.
And here Fincher uses the type of deadline that Hitchcock talked about, the bomb under the table.
Tell the audience there is a bomb under that table and will go off in 5 minutes. But the whole emotion of the audience is totally different because you've given them that information. You've got the audience working.
But Fincher tricks you again, because when we return to this moment, the 2 things that build suspense at the start are no longer relevant. One, the bomb beneath them was never a threat, it's in a different building and they are safe.
Jack passes out, so we fade to black, and then when we come up, they're in a building, but they're not in the same building.
The bomb must never go off. You work that audience into a state, and then they'll get angry because you haven't provided them with any relief.
Its purpose in the opening is to get your attention, to look for information and possible solutions on how to resolve the danger. And 2, the threat Tyler seemed to pose was never real. He's not physically there, and the danger we assumed was external turns out to be something entirely different. The flashback structure also shows that the film's nonlinear narrative is conscious of the viewer's presence. The narrator has all the information, but he only shares a limited amount, keeping most of it secret, even though we get clues to the twist from the start.
I know this because Tyler knows this.
Or think of what Fincher calls the subliminal breads.
Subliminal. Think. I love using a subliminal advertising technique to introduce a character.
The fractured storytelling mirrors the narrator's already disturbed mind, making the eventual twist feel perfect and inevitable in hindsight. This unreliable storytelling extends beyond structure. Breaking the fourth wall isn't just a stylistic choice, it's a side effect of the film playing out inside the narrator's head. And to emphasize this even further, Fincher makes the film even more meta, turning it into a film within a film. For example, Tyler's exposition isn't just a backstory, it's a performance. He addresses the audience directly, pointing at objects on screen, as if he's presenting a manifesto. It's as though Tyler knows he's not just selling his philosophy to the narrator, he's selling it to us, the viewers. showing us that we are also consumers right at this moment. And the intertextuality goes even deeper, since we are watching a film which is operating within the film as well. It's also about power. Up until the narrator meets Tyler on the plane, we see him judging those around him, making smart remarks which positions him as superior in our eyes. But with Tyler, the dynamic shifts instantly.
Tyler, you are by far the most interesting single-serving friend I've ever met.
In just a moment, Tyler takes control by pointing out the very characteristic the narrator relies on to feel superior.
How's it working out for you? What? Being clever?
And don't forget that with the difference between the two expositions, Fincher keeps the theme of their opposing characters in mind as well. The narrator's exposition was similar to his character, a passive observer showing us his furniture, etc., while Tyler is actively presenting us what he does, only another part of his mind talking to us. One is chaos, the other is order. On the topic of order, David Fincher is the most precise and economical director in my eyes. The reason why he can keep us on the edge of our seats is because every shot and every scene he implements has a place in the film. He only uses what's really necessary.
If I could make the movie shorter, I would, but given my intimate knowledge of all the material, I just couldn't get it any shorter.
And then there are his infamous title sequences, showing just how much emphasis he places on a film's opening. They are front-loaded with spectacle and information. The first 10 to 20 minutes of his films are mini masterpieces, short films that could stand on their own. As Fields said in his book about screenplays, endings are manifested in the resolution, and the resolution is conceived in the beginning. In Fight Club, a film so famous for its ending, it's just as important to look at its beginning. David Fincher is a master of control, and he's not afraid to remind you that you are watching a film. His attention to detail, whether through subtle CGI, precise camera movements, or deliberate casting choices, creates an immersive experience that is truly his own. His visuals are further elevated by the work of sound designer Rank Lice, along with the unforgettable scores of Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross in most of his films, or in the case of Fight Club, the Dust Brothers. Together, these elements help him craft timeless masterpieces that continue to captivate audiences. So next time you watch one of his films, pay attention to how every element is carefully placed to shape the whole. Listen, take notes of the small things, and recognize how everything he provides you from the first moments is crucial. Fincher doesn't just craft films, he creates complete experiences that demand more than simple viewing. His films are not only endlessly rewatchable, they are endlessly worthy of study.
You met me at a very strange time in my life.